All right, folks, at this point, we will start with the candidates for State Representative District 75, and we will begin with a 2-minute introduction.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gonzalez, and I'm running for State Representative District 75. I grew up in Clint, Texas, and I'm a proud graduate of Clint High School. I left when I graduated from high school, went to UT Austin to get degrees in history and Mexican American studies, continued my education, got my master's in social justice from St. Edward's University, and then continued because I love school. I went on to get a PhD, finishing my PhD in education from UT Austin. I grew up on a farm, so going to school full-time was never enough. Simultaneously, I was fortunate to work in the Texas legislature for three legislative sessions. Went on and was assistant director of the National Hispanic Institute, and then most recently was assistant dean for multicultural affairs at Southwestern University and a professor in the communication studies department. I am really happy to be in a high school because for the past 3 years I've been an educator, and it just feels great to be in this environment because I have given my whole life to fighting for education. And I left the classroom to run for office because we have some serious issues we need to face in the Texas legislature, and we need a strong representative and an effective legislator to do that. And with my background, my experience in the policy world, and my education, I hope to use all of that to serve the community that I love, the community that has supported me my whole entire life, and make sure that my family and my younger siblings have a district that's out there supporting them as much as possible. And I'm, again, very honored and humbled to be here this morning.
We will now start with 2 questions from the students.
This is a question from the student. Medicaid reimbursement rates are very low in El Paso area. Because El Paso is considered a rural county and are part of the reason El Paso is having a doctor shortage, what will you do to help raise reimbursement rates or change El Paso's rural county status?
That is a very impressive question from high school students. I don't think I could have written a question like that when I was y'all's age. So first of all, thank you for such a difficult question. I go to a lot of candidate screenings and I get very easy questions, and this is probably the most difficult question that I've gotten, so thank you. But I think there's a lot of things that we can do. A lot of the reason that we don't get a significant Medicaid reimbursement is a lot of it's philosophical, ideologically based. We just need to be, as Texas say, that we are going to accept those Medicaid reimbursements at the greatest percentage possible. But there's other creative ways, because in the Texas legislature, we have a huge gap between Democrats and Republicans. So we can't always get the bills that we want to get passed through. We can, so there's other ways to deal with the medical, 15 seconds. I used to be a professor, I'm long-winded. There's multiple ways to get the medical attention needed for the border, strengthening UTEP, making it Tier 1, supporting the medical school, and supporting public health initiatives that are just more than the Medicaid reimbursements. Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Are you sure you're not playing with the timer?
This is also a student question. Texas has one of the highest teen pregnancy rates in the nation, and one of the most conservative sex education programs in the nation as well. What will you do to help lower our teen pregnancy rates?
That is a very wonderful question and a very important question. 52% of Latinas get pregnant before 19. If you think about that, more than half of women like me get pregnant before 19, and that impacts not only them, but their families, their access to education. It's a domino effect. I think definitely having a holistic sexual education program is one of the first steps. I think funding programs that support women's health is a second step. I think just creating family-based conversations, not just with the young women, but with their parents, their siblings, their grandparents even, because in El Paso, our family structure is not just mother and daughter or daughter and father. It's our grandparents, it's our tias, it's our tios, it's our siblings, and so definitely making the conversation around sexual health a family conversation, and then supporting women's health issues holistically.
Now we have a few questions from the audience as well. 1 minute to reply on these.
This is a question from the audience. Will you support a change in state law to define runners separate from pedestrian so runners can run on the roadway and are not limited to sidewalks?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes. Will you support a change in state law to define runner separate from pedestrian so runners can run the roadway and are not limited to sidewalks?
Well, I support law. I've actually never thought about that, so that's a really good question. Like I mentioned, I was fortunate to be in Austin for my higher education experience, and in Austin we do have a lot of spaces that promote running, and we have, so that makes the city an overall healthy city. I think initially, off the top of my head, yes. I would have to do more research, to be honest, because I want to make sure that I would be making an informed decision. But I think anything that would make El Paso healthy and safe is something that I'm a big advocate for. But I will say in District 75, which is, Zaragoza to Tornillo, we're still struggling with getting roads, and we're still struggling with getting sidewalks. So my first priority is making sure that the needs of my district are being met, and that we're making sure that they have accessible infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another question from the audience. Many parents and students are aware of rising tuition rates for college. What is your plan to help students from the El Paso area pursue higher education?
That's a phenomenal question. As obviously a beneficiary of going to having access to higher education, I'm a strong higher ed advocate. I've been advocating for higher education, both as a professor and then in our Save Our Schools initiative. There are multiple things that I would do. First off, there was a study that showed that a child born today would have to pay $500,000 in tuition when it's time for them to go to college. It's just outrageous at the increase of college tuition that we've seen since tuition deregulation. So the first thing I would do is I would ask university presidents and hold them more accountable to make sure that we are using the resources in our university system to not raise tuition any more than we need to. I would support any legislation that would give money back to higher institutions of higher education to make sure that they're not having some pressure to raise tuition. And last but not least, and I think this is really important, is when I come home after the 6 months in the legislature, is do some grassroots organizing to support local scholarships that help young people from El Paso get into institutions of higher education.
Another question from the audience. What legislation do you believe best address the reassimilation of soldiers leaving the battlefield and returning to Texas?
What legislation I feel best? Wow. I can't name a piece of legislation off the top of my head, but I know that there has been significant effort from the Veteran Affairs Committee to take care of our veterans. And one of the things that I recently was, what I taught last semester in one of my classes, is the increasing rate of suicide among veterans. That we lose a significant amount of veterans, more veterans to suicide after coming back from war than we do in the actual war. So definitely anything that helps our veterans with readjusting their mental health, post-traumatic stress disorder, things regarding around those issues, I'm specifically passionate about.
And Ms. Gonzalez, you now have 1 minute for your closing statement.
Thank you very much. Like I said, I'm excited and honored to be here, being back in the school. It fills my heart. It's just that this is a centerpiece for everything. This is what I'm fighting for. I left my job as a professor to fight for schools, to fight for families, to fight for students, to make sure that we have someone in the legislature who's going to go out there and represent District 75. Like I said, District 75 is right outside of El Paso, and it needs an effective legislator because we're still fighting for water, for roads, for sidewalks, for accessible, for equitable schools. And my background working at the Capitol and my nonprofit experience and my education, I think will help find someone, will help me be an effective legislator.